A young spotted hyena, stronger and faster than the female standing in front of her, steps back from a fresh kill and lets that weaker female eat first. She is not afraid. She is obeying a rule she was born into, and she will obey it for the rest of her life. On the open plains of the Masai Mara, a biologist named Holekamp has followed spotted hyenas for decades. Her team found something that should not be possible in a world that runs on tooth and muscle. In a hyena clan, a cub does not fight its way up. It inherits its rank, the exact position its mother holds, and it inherits it long before it is strong enough to challenge anyone. In 2000, Holekamp's colleague Anne Eng published the mechanism. A cub takes the rank just below its mother, not by winning fights, but because its mother and her allies step in every single time it matters, teaching the whole clan who this cub is allowed to dominate and who it must yield to. In 2021, a study in the journal Science went further. Across 27 years and more than 70,000 recorded interactions, the cubs were found to inherit not just a rank, but their mother's entire web of allies. And the higher the mother sat, the more completely the cub copied her world. So here's the question that should bother you. If the strongest animal in the clan steps back for the weakest one who was simply born higher, then what is strength actually for? And here is the harder one, the question this whole story turns on. Have you ever watched the most capable person in a room lose, quietly, to someone who was simply born into the right name, and told yourself that could not really be the whole explanation? It can. And the reason runs deeper than Rome. For the first 140 years of the Roman Republic, the highest office in the state, the consulship, was closed. Not by a law you could read on a wall, but by blood. If you were not born into a patrician family, the door was shut, and everyone treated that shut door as natural, as if the gods themselves had sorted Romans into those who lead and those who are led. One man spent a decade attacking that door. His name was Lucius Sextius Lateranus. He was a plebeian, born outside the families that owned the consulship, and with his ally, Gaius Licinius Stolo, he got himself elected tribune, the one real office a plebeian could hold. Then he did something close to unthinkable. He used the tribune's veto to freeze the republic. For 5 years, Sextius and Stolo blocked the election of the senior magistrates. The machinery of Rome stalled year after year because 2 men refused to let it run on birthright alone. In 367 before the Common Era, Rome broke. The Licinian-Sextian laws passed, and the next year, Lucius Sextius became the first plebeian consul in the history of the Republic. Livy, writing centuries later, gives him one cold line, the first of the plebeians to attain that honor. Read that again. It took one man, a 10-year fight, and the deliberate paralysis of an entire state just to prove that a person born on the wrong side of a family line could do a job he was obviously capable of doing. The capability was never in question. The birth was. If you have ever lost a room to a last name instead of a skill, you already understand the next 13 centuries of this story. That recognition is the reason this channel exists, and the reason to stay. Because the next civilization did not fight to crack birthright open. It spent a fortune to weld it shut. 1,300 years later and 5,000 miles east, in 1623, a man named Tokugawa Iemitsu became the 3rd shogun of Japan, the military ruler who held the entire country in his hand. His grandfather had won that power on a battlefield. His father had been handed it to keep it in the family. Iemitsu was given it for one reason only. He was born next in line. and he knew it. He is remembered for telling the assembled lords of Japan, the daimyo, men far older and more accomplished than he was, that unlike his grandfather and his father, who had earned their place, it had been decided at his birth that he would rule them. He was not apologizing. He was explaining the new rules. In 1635, he formalized a system called Sankin Kotai, alternate attendance. Every lord in Japan was forced to keep a second household in the capital, to leave his family there as hostages in all but name, and to travel back and forth on a fixed schedule that drained his wealth on the road, so he could never grow strong enough to challenge the man at the top. A whole country locked into a hierarchy by birth and engineered so that no amount of talent below could ever climb past the accident of whose son you were. Two civilizations, one that fought for a decade to pry birthright open, one that spent a fortune to seal it shut. The same instinct at two temperatures, and in both, the question of who was actually best was beside the point. Now come inside living memory. On the 17th of December 2011, the same television broadcast that told North Korea its leader Kim Jong-il was dead also told it who would rule next, his third son, Kim Jong-un, named in that same announcement the great successor. There had been no contest. There was no room of capable people from which the best was chosen. For roughly the previous year and a half, the dying father had built the handover by hand, making his young, untested son a 4-star general and placing him at the top of the party's Central Military Commission. Not because the son had commanded armies or won anything, but to preload the answer before the question could be asked. The third generation of one family ruling a state that calls itself a People's Republic, a throne in a country with no kings. And here is the cost that is easy to skip past. In a system like that, every genuinely capable person in the country wakes up knowing the ceiling. The top is taken. It was taken at a birth. Their competence is not a ladder, it is a liability, because real ability near an inherited throne looks like a threat. The most able people in the room are not promoted. They are watched, managed, and, when necessary, removed. The throne does not want the best, it wants the loyal. Now go back to the hyena on the plain, stepping away from the kill she could have taken. For a long time, biologists assumed animal hierarchies were at least honest in a way human ones are not. That out there in the dirt, the strong rose and the weak sank, and rank meant something real about the body. Holekamp's hyenas broke that assumption. The clan does not run on strength. It runs on inheritance, enforced by coalitions, taught to every cub before it is old enough to question it. The strongest low-born hyena spends her entire life yielding to high-born animals she could physically destroy, because the rule was installed in her by everyone around her, until it stopped feeling like a rule and started feeling like reality. That is the loop, and it did not begin with Rome or Japan or a broadcast in Pyongyang. It began tens of millions of years before any of them, in clans of animals who stumbled onto the cheapest way to keep power inside a bloodline. Not to defend it with constant violence, but to teach everyone, including the strong, that the order is natural. We did not invent inherited rank. We inherited the instinct to inherit it, and it is running right now inside the most merit-sounding institutions we have built. In 2023, 3 economists, Raj Chetty, David Deming, and John Friedman, studied admissions at America's most elite universities. An applicant from the richest 1% of families, they found, was more than twice as likely to be admitted as a middle-class applicant with the exact same test scores. At Harvard, the children of alumni, the legacies, were admitted at around 1 in 3, against roughly 1 in 17 for everyone else. The advantage came largely from preferences that, by the study's own measure, predict nothing about how well the student would actually perform. We told ourselves we built a machine that finds the best person. We built a machine that, like the Hyena clan, quietly teaches everyone to step back for whoever was born higher, and calls the result fair. That is the verdict, with no hedging. The best person in the room rarely ends up on top, because being best was never what the room was selecting for. From hyena clans to Roman consulships to inherited thrones to the admissions office, the order is settled before the contest begins, and the deepest function of any hierarchy is to make the people inside it, especially the capable ones, believe the order is natural. Next week the loop runs again, somewhere you would swear is pure honesty, where the rule applies only when someone is watching. If a story about the machinery underneath your own life is worth your time, subscribe, and you will not miss the turn. Which leaves you with one question, and it is not about Rome or Pyongyang. It is about the last time you watched someone clearly less able rise past someone clearly better, and felt that small pressure to call it normal. Who taught you to step back? And when did you start calling it fair?